Welcome to today's Explainer. We're breaking down the true and honestly often hidden costs of basement water mitigation for property owners right here in Greenville, South Carolina. Look, when a flood happens, the numbers can be incredibly overwhelming, especially if you don't know what's actually going on beneath the surface of your home. So we're going to decode exactly what drives those costs and, more importantly, how to protect your property.
Let's dive right in with a question almost every homeowner asks when they find a puddle downstairs. You see water, you grab the wet vac, you suck it up, and you think, okay, we're good, right? Well, is that really enough? It's super tempting to think that once that visible standing water is gone, the whole problem is completely solved. But here's the reality. Visible water is usually just the beginning. The absolute biggest misconception out there is that mitigation is just pumping out water. What you see on the surface, that is literally just the tip of the iceberg. The final cost of restoration is almost never about that puddle on the floor. It's determined by how far the moisture has traveled and how long it's been sitting there. So to really understand the costs, we've got to shatter this illusion of a dry basement. Section 1. The visible water illusion. To understand this illusion, we actually have to look at our geography. Up here in the upstate, our basements are fighting a seriously uphill battle. I mean, we've got heavy seasonal rainfall, plus these clay-heavy soils that just hold on to moisture like a giant saturated sponge instead of draining it away. All of that creates intense hydrostatic pressure, which is just a fancy way of saying it literally pushes water right against your foundation walls. Combine that with naturally humid crawl spaces, and it means that once water gets in, our environment traps it fast. And this perfectly illustrates the problem. Concrete might look completely dry to the naked eye after you mop it up. But as professional thermal imaging and digital moisture meters show us, hidden water remains trapped deep inside those materials. Concrete is especially deceptive, you guys. It can continue to release moisture vapor for weeks after a water event. If you just dry the surface, that vapor is eventually going to destroy whatever you build on top of it. Section 2. Clean versus contaminated water. Okay, let's talk about how the actual type of water impacts your wallet, because the source completely changes the mitigation playbook. Think of a clean supply line leaking under your sink. That's known as Category 1. It mostly just requires extraction and controlled drying. But then you contrast that with Category 3 contaminated water. We're talking groundwater pushing through the soil or a sewage backup. The CDC warns that this water can contain bacteria, pathogens, chemicals, the whole shebang. That drastic shift turns a relatively simple drying job into a major health and safety project requiring heavy sanitation and specialized disposal. Because of those hazards, porous materials soaked in contaminated water simply cannot be saved. It's a strict health hazard. So this means your mitigation suddenly involves physically tearing out drywall, stripping out insulation, and yanking up carpet padding. It is highly labor-intensive, requires proper disposal protocols, and it completely changes the scope and the cost of the work. Section 3. Time multiplies your costs. Now, this is something every property owner needs to hear. The crucial point we need to emphasize is that the clock is your absolute worst enemy. Water doesn't just sit politely on the floor waiting for you to clean it up. No, it actively migrates. It wicks right up your walls through capillary action, literally defying gravity. It absorbs deep into wood framing and drywall. Gravity pulls it down into hidden subfloors. And while it sits there, vapor diffusion spreads it through the air, jacking up the humidity throughout the entire structure. Every single hour you wait, that water footprint expands. If left wet for a few days, because let's face it, evaporation naturally slows down in Greenville's humidity, you end up with severe secondary damage. I'm talking aggressive microbial growth. The gypsum industry actually notes that prolonged moisture exposure significantly increases mold amplification. And once you've got mold, you're no longer just drying a house. You are adding super costly containment and remediation procedures to the bill. Section 4. The Finished Basement Challenge. Let's look at a structural variable, because how you use your basement totally dictates how hard it is to save it. Unfinished basements mostly involve drying concrete and exposed framing with fairly straightforward extraction. But finished basements, that's a whole different ballgame. They cost significantly more to mitigate because they are packed with absorbent materials. You're looking at carpet removal, drywall demolition, replacing ruined insulation, and highly complex hidden moisture mapping. See, moisture gets trapped behind complex drywall assemblies and deep inside those wall cavities. Professionals often have to do what's called selective demolition just to find these hidden pockets of saturated, moldy insulation trapped behind your expensive finishes. If they don't find and remove that hidden moisture, it will just quietly continue to destroy your basement from the inside out, long after the floors feel dry to the touch.
Section 5. Professional Structural Drying.
This brings us to the ultimate solution, the core of what experts actually do to save your property. So what exactly is structural drying? Well, according to the ISCRC standard, basically the absolute rulebook for restoration, true mitigation is a controlled process of removing moisture from inside the structure itself to meet acceptable drying goals. It is definitely not just surface drying. It's a highly technical process designed to stabilize the environment and protect the very bones of your home from irreversible damage. To pull this off, companies like Dry Doctors of Greenville use a rigorous, scientifically backed progressive formula that balances 4 key steps. Number 1, extraction, to physically remove the bulk water. 2, airflow, to push the remaining moisture into the air. 3, dehumidification, often using advanced low-grain refrigerants to pull that moisture right out of the air. And 4, daily moisture monitoring, to track the progress. It is a very precise science. Look at this professional setup. This level of advanced containment is exactly why you hire the experts. By using commercial-grade air movers and putting up plastic barriers, they are literally engineering the environment inside that specific room. They manipulate the temperature, control the humidity, and force evaporation rates to pull water out of the studs and concrete way faster than mold can even think about growing.
And that's speed? It's absolutely critical. As the industry notes, a fast mitigation response can often prevent structural deterioration, odor development, and mold colonization. The whole goal of all this specialized equipment, the containment, the monitoring, it's rapid mold prevention. They're actively interrupting the conditions that allow those microbes to thrive, which at the end of the day saves you thousands of dollars in reconstruction costs down the line.
So if you're in the upstate, be prepared. You can scan the QR code here to connect with Dry Doctors Water Restoration. They provide 24/7 emergency response because, as we've learned, fast action saves your home. Getting experts on site immediately is literally the single best way to ensure that hidden moisture doesn't multiply your restoration costs. I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought. When water strikes your property, are you going to just treat the puddle and hope for the best? Or will you bring in the experts to uncover the hidden iceberg and truly save your home? Knowing what lurks below the surface, how will you protect your property the next time the waters rise? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay informed, stay dry, and I will catch you on the next one.